This is Talking Drupal, a weekly chat about web design and development from a group of people with one thing in common. We love Drupal. This is episode 508, Drupal user groups and meetups. On today's show, we're talking about Drupal user groups, Drupal meetups, and why they're important, with guests Lee Walker, Bernardo Martinez, and Bo Shipley. We'll also cover Drupal Core 11.2 as our module of the week. Welcome to Talking Drupal. Our guests today are Bernardo Martinez, Lee Walker, and Bo Shipley. Lee Walker is a veteran software engineer with over 30 years of experience. He is the principal engineer at Code Journeyman, a Chattanooga-based agency known for its Drupal expertise. He's a passionate advocate for open source. Lee founded the Chattanooga Drupal Users Group, the Chattanooga PHP Users Group, and organizes Drupal Camp Chattanooga. Bo Shipley discovered Drupal through the Chattanooga Drupal Users Group in 2013, sparking a decade-long career in Drupal development. Believing that strong communities drive growth, Bo annually participates in regional Drupal camps and DrupalCon North America, where he's known to extend Drupal conversations beyond the official sessions with a beer in hand and a genuine eagerness to keep the dialogue flowing. And last but certainly not least, Bernardo Martinez is a Chattanooga-based front-end developer who shares a passion for both higher ed and the government sector. He's been active in the Drupal community since 2018 and actively contributes through mentoring, module support, theme work, and speaking at tech conferences. Bo, Lee, Bernardo, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here.
Nice to be here.
I'm John Picozzi, Solutions Architect at EPAM, and today my co-hosts are joining us for the next 4 weeks, JD Leonard, freelance Drupal architect and developer at Modern Biz Consulting. JD Leonard is a freelance Drupal architect and developer in Austin, Texas, with nearly 19 years of Drupal experience. He focuses on the development and implementation of complex web applications using Drupal and enjoys organizing local meetups and conferences. JD, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
And filling in this week for Nick Laughlin as he's taking a much-needed vacation, Stephen Cross, founder and former host at Talking Drupal. Hey, Stephen.
Hello, and I am not from Chattanooga, just so everyone knows.
Man, let me tell you how many times there's Chattanooga in that intro section there. I nailed each one of them, which was great because I was definitely like, oh man, this is going to get real funky real quick, but I think I did okay.
I was really tempted to edit my intro to include Chattanooga a few times, but I'm not from Chattanooga.
Yeah, no, Austin's a lot shorter to say. Not as fun maybe, but definitely shorter. All right, and now let's move to our module of the week. We'll turn it over to Martin Anderson-Klutz, a senior solutions engineer at Acquia and a maintainer of a number of Drupal modules and recipes of his own. Martin, what not so much module, but core version do you have for us this week?
Thanks, John. Have you ever wanted a version of Drupal core that lets you get rid of .module files, install modules significantly faster, and leverage more flexibility when working with single directory components? There's a new feature release of Drupal that offers all of these and more. It's Drupal Core 11.2, and as of this recording, we expect it to be released in the coming days, likely created by Catch. Now, single directory components have been a focus of excitement for Drupal's front-end developers since they were added to Drupal 10.1 as an experimental module and merged into 10.3 as a stable feature. With Drupal 11.2, SDCs now have a concept of variants to allow for different ways of presenting a component's information. Some component frameworks like Storybook have a somewhat different concept of variants, which is really a set of property value presets that are useful for testing. Variants with Drupal SDCs strike me as being analogous to view modes for content types, and you can have separate template files for each variant, or you can have conditional logic within a single template based on the variant in use. Our own Nick X. Van, CHX, and some others have put some significant work into allowing pre-process hooks to be defined as object-oriented classes, which brings us a significant step closer to not needing .module files anymore. Hooks and .module files are Drupalisms, so removing the need for them is a big improvement for developer experience and makes it easier for developers to get started with Drupal. Now, in 11.2, the module installer has been updated to only rebuild the container after several modules have been installed, which significantly speeds up installing modules at once. Drupal 11.2 also brings us a recipe unpack composer extension. So when you compose or require a recipe, the dependencies get automatically added to your site's composer.json file, so you can apply and then remove the recipe and still have a fully functional site. Package Manager is now a hidden module in Drupal Core, which is critical for initiatives like automatic updates in Project Browser that the community has been working on for years. And Drupal Core now also supports the next generation AVIF format with WebP as a fallback for servers that don't support generating AVIF. Of course, there are also a variety of dependency updates as well for CK Editor, Symfony, Composer, and more, as well as too many minor improvements and bug fixes to cover in detail here. But let's talk about Drupal Core 11.2.
No, Martin. I think I'd like to hear you go through all the minor improvements and bug fixes that were added. No, I'm kidding. I mean, I always get excited for a new version of Drupal. This one seems more code better than maybe other versions, but there are still a lot of other I think average user facing issues that or improvements that you'll see. So super excited about this. I think the single directory component bit with the variants is interesting to me. I'm going to be interested to see how that works, plays out. Yeah. Always excited for a new version of Drupal Core. It just means we're progressing.
Yeah, I think it will be interesting to see. There will probably be sort of component libraries or sets of components that people want to share that now will probably have to require 11.2 or newer if they're making use of variants. So it'll be interesting to sort of see how that shakes out. But yeah, I think it definitely sounds like it'll be add a lot of capabilities to the whole single directory component system.
Yeah, I imagine that will help or accelerate Experience Builder as far as being able to do more stuff with that. So that's definitely interesting to me. And I know Nick has put in quite a bit of work into this version of Drupal under the hood. So as well as CHX. So those guys are working behind the scenes as well as thousands of other people to bring Drupal greatness to the masses. When do we anticipate this being released?
This week. So usually it's towards the end of the week. I would say late in the day Friday sort of thing. It's
yeah.
fairly typical. So
Okay.
whenever that works out to, don't have my calendar in front of me, but yeah, hopefully by the time this is released, folks will be able to install it and try it out and not have the, whatever RC1 or 1.2, I think RC2, I think is the most recent as of this recording.
Now I have to admit, I am familiar with WebP, but AVIF is new to me. What do we know about that format?
I used to know the answer to that question by heart, but if I recall correctly, it's another one of those image formats that started off as being using a compression algorithm that was originally developed for video, but has been found to have, in a number of cases, some additional compression savings. So from a overall performance standpoint, it should make your website just a little snappier. And I think I checked on Can I Use yesterday, and it was about 94%. So pretty good support out there. Yeah. Yep.
Wait, where does the compression stop? That's where I want to know. Every time we come out with a new format, it's like it squeezes out just a little more compression. And I'm like, okay. I mean, everybody's kind of working. Well, I guess I can't make that generalization that everybody's working with a cable connection, because there are still some regions of the globe where people use cell phones to connect to websites. But I'm like, I don't know. I thought WebP was going to be it for a while, and now we have AVIF. So I don't know. Maybe AVIF will be it for a while. We'll see.
Yeah, I feel like Google actually put a lot of effort into promoting WebP, including sort of dinging your Lighthouse score if you weren't using WebP or AVIF. So I'm not sure who's really led the charge on AVIF, but I suspect that before long there will be some newer one that is even that much higher level of compression. So
more compressed. It'll be like literally a sponge with a brick on it. That should maybe we can work that into a image format.
Sponge brick compression.
Yes, that's
All right, there we go.
perfect. That's it. That's it.
Who
Right.
Either
doesn't
that or
look-
middle out, maybe.
And so, who doesn't like artifacts in their video?
I mean, hey, listen, I don't know. All right. Any other thoughts on Drupal 11.2? Going once, going twice. All right, Martin. Well, as usual, thank you for bringing us not so much a module, but a collection of modules known as Drupal this week. And if folks wanted to suggest a module or a core version or something for the module of the week segment, how could they best do that?
We're always happy to talk about interesting candidates for module of the week in the Talking Drupal channel of Drupal Slack, or folks can reach out to me directly as ManClue on all of the Drupal and social channels.
Fabulous. Thanks a lot, Martin.
See you next week.
All right, let's dive into talking about Drupal user groups and meetups. And I imagine we're going to cover quite a few different areas of this topic because it is a large topic. But before we do, I want to kind of dig into how each of you got introduced to your local Drupal user group. So going back to the great introductions that we did, Lee, I'm going to start with you because you actually started the Chattanooga user group. So how did you kind of get introduced to user groups, Drupal user groups, and then how did you decide like, oh, I'm gonna go start one in my local area?
Well, I started Drupal without any community. I just picked up the Drupal 6 book and kind of started working through it. Managed, I don't know how, I didn't realize Drupal.org existed. Managed to find Drupal Camp Boone for the one time it was on in like 2010. And I like, that's not too far away from me. Went, met a bunch
Sorry,
of people.
whereabouts is that?
Boone, North Carolina.
North Carolina. Okay, cool.
Thought that's not too far away. And there were about 30 people there, I think. The only one time they've ever had it. And when I came back, I was like, oh, that was great. Like talking to people, that was fantastic. And then I sort of Drupal.org came through, and oh, there's a groups.drupal.org. Found a Chattanooga one. As far as I could tell, they'd never met. Sort of reached out to the guy on it. Eventually got a reply, and he added me as a co-maintainer. In all these years, I've still never met him. And then I sort of picked it up from there and said, let's have one. Arrange for a space to use, and thought, let's grab people together, see what happens.
And how often does a Chattanooga user group meet?
We meet every month.
Every month. Okay.
Every month.
So then going to Bo now. So Bo jumped into this user group X number of years ago, right? He found the group, jumped into it. How did you get introduced to the user group, Bo? Was it like, hey, I looked on Drupal.org and found that there was one near me, or was it, something else?
I actually found it from Meetup.com. I was working I was going to school, computer science, and was looking for some groups that actually met so I could, hang out with developers and learn other things. And none of the other groups met. I signed up for everything. The only one that ever met was Drupal, and it met about 2 blocks from where I worked at. So I ended up just going one evening after work, and it was at Lee's office. And, I didn't know anybody there. There was about 8 or 10 people there at the time. And, they talked shop for a couple hours, and then we went over to this little, beer bar and continued the conversation. And then I, came back the next month, and that was, 12 years ago.
Wow.
And
so were you doing Drupal as a job at that point, or was it more of a hobby?
I didn't even know what Drupal was at the time. I was a CNC machinist. I was machining aerospace parts for a defensive contractor just a couple blocks down the road. But I was going to school for computer science, so I was learning, your programming and things. And I was just trying to get into the community somewhere because I knew that the only way I was ever getting a job would, be to find other people probably. And I just kind of fell into Drupal.
Interesting. And then Bernardo, how did you get into a Drupal user group? How did you come into the fold?
So I actually started going to the Atlanta meetups
Okay.
that were listed on meetup.com. So I went to the JavaScript one, a couple on Ruby on Rails, and they were interesting, They were large and they were usually like a mini conference setup. And I liked them, but I missed that aspect of a personal connection with some of those. And then about that time, I went to graduate school and I was here in Chattanooga. And I knew there was the Chattanooga Drupal users group, but I used WordPress and Joomla before I actually used Drupal. And then I thought, oh, maybe I should go check it out. And I think a month or two passed by and I missed it. And then I was like, oh, let me go downtown. And then I stumbled upon the guys and meeting up one day down there.
Wow.
I'm fascinated by the fact, Bo, that you mentioned you learned about Drupal through meetup.com. So I'm curious how meetup.com has played a role in the journey of your user groups. No, let's start with Bo there.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, I signed up for every group that was on Meetup.com for developing, and nobody ever met. So so I went there and went to Lee's office and hung out. And I mean, I didn't even talk to anybody for a few months probably because I was an imposter. I mean, I didn't even, do any web development, didn't know what Drupal was, hung out, started talking to them and kept showing up. And I think it was the first or the second meetup that I went to that Lee was trying to get everybody to pile in his van and leave to go to Florida the next day to go to Drupal Camp, Florida. And, my first, like I said, just with the meetup, it introduced me to Drupal, and I started playing with it a little bit when I got home, after a couple months, I guess, just trying to figure it out. And, it's what helped me find Drupal anyway. So.
It's funny because in my head, I have this visual of like Lee being like, "Hey, you just came to this user group, jump in this van and go to this camp down in Florida." Like, oh,
I've done that
okay.
more than once.
All right. I mean, that's one way to grow the community by like, opening a van door and then promising a trip to Florida. I like it.
As a tool meetup, I guess you guys have used that tool. Have you used any other tools? And how would you recommend someone using it for a user group?
I can take that. When we first started putting it together, Meetup was the big thing and everyone used it. So it was easy to go to Meetup. And groups.user.org, groups.drupal.org, user.org. But I frequently forget to add each month to that one. But other than that, it is a lot of talking to people. Interestingly, we do have a hybrid one where we meet at my office and then we fire up Zoom if anyone can't make it. So we have people in different parts of the country that join in.
Do you find that Meetup is still useful? So, and the reason I ask this is like I organize the Drupal Providence meetup and we use Meetup as well as Drupal.org, events.drupal.org for posting the Drupal specific events. But like I feel like early on, Meetup was like the place to go to find these sorts of events, right? I feel like over time, it's become expensive. Two, it's become kind of noisy and polluted with like spammers trying to sell their laptops. I've gotten a couple of messages in my group about that, right? I just wonder, like, are you guys seeing the same thing, or maybe it's just a regional thing where like for you guys it works really well, and you're like, no, it's great.
No, I think Meetup has suffered from the enshittification that's going through everything. It used to be great and it's been slowly getting worse. I mean, one of my pet peeves is I'm signed up to a bunch of groups. It'd be really nice for Sunday evening for them to send me an email that says, this is what your groups are doing this week. But if you haven't signed up and put it in your calendar, you don't get any reminders. I mean, that's its job. I mean, you have one job, right? Remind me when the things are, and it doesn't do that. I feel like it used to, but it doesn't anymore.
Well, certainly when the private equity took over, right? They started changing things and putting things behind paywalls, and really limiting the experience both for attendees and organizers.
So I do know that and we can move on from the meetup topic because I don't want to spend all show talking about that. But I mean, I think from a Drupal standpoint, I know that the event organizers working group is working to bring a lot of the features from both groups.drupal.org and some of those meetup features that people rely on into Drupal.org. So that way the event system there can I won't say replace it, but act as a equitable alternative. I think the holdup right now is, the Drupal.org upgrade from 7 to 10 or 11. So I'm very confident that once that upgrade is complete, we'll be able to add some more of these useful features to Drupal.org and maybe hopefully get meetups and whatnot away from meetup.com. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
All right, so
Yeah.
let's switch back to actual meetups and conferences. So Lee, I'm wondering, in your opinion, what makes meetups different from conferences, both as an organizer and as an attendee?
But personally, a lot less stress for meetups. Organizing a conference and having sponsorships and money and food and shirts. I'm normally pretty laid back, but every single year I lose sleep over the Drupal camp in Chattanooga because I wake up, I haven't done this and I haven't done that. I need to do that tomorrow. Whereas I find that the way we run meetups is a lot less stress if we run it as they tend to be maybe not lightning talk, but I have an idea of something we can talk about for about 20 minutes. What's happened new this month? What have you worked on? And it kind of goes around the group and people talk. And we have a sort of an organic discussion breaks out. And, in the middle of it, I'll probably have a rant about something that annoys me. But the guys at the group deliberately push one of those in to get me going every time because they think it's funny. But yeah, most of it is organically done as opposed to the enormous amount of preparation you have to put in for a conference.
Yeah.
It's
What
money.
about you, Bo? What do you think are, big differences between conference and meetups?
I mean, I think that the great thing about meetups is like, well, ours anyway, is that we meet every month. So we meet on the third Thursday of the month every month. So it's a routine thing. So that if we have an issue, we can always bring it up and talk to other people and just kind of bounce ideas around. And we have some people kind of come in for, whenever they have issues, they'll come in and we'll kind of work through stuff. And the conferences, like Lee, there's a lot of stuff going on. Helping be an organizer of like Camp Chattanooga during the day of the conference. We got to worry about food, or how everything's going on. So it is kind of stressful for that, and you don't really get to relax until like the last half of the day. So it's, I guess that we make our meetup, our Drupal users group meetup, just really easy and laid back. So that way it's just kind of open, like an unconference, kind of like Lee was talking about, like an unconference where we can kind of talk about stuff we want to, or bring it up, or sometimes we'll run down a rabbit hole so people want to learn and spend 30 minutes or an hour on it, and then after we finish the conversation at Lee's office, we just move somewhere else. We may go get food, we may go to a bar or a restaurant or something, and kind of continue the conversation from there.
So, question on the term user group versus meetup. Like in your mind, and Bernardo, I'll direct this question to you. Are those kind of the same things?
Yes and no. Because the user group can be the people in the Chattanooga area who are involved in Drupal and not necessarily involved with the meetup. Because our meetup is not as big as our user group is. Because we have people all over Tennessee and sometimes people who are in North Georgia who are part of our user group. But the meetup itself might be a little smaller and a little more niche. And the meetup is mostly for when you're ready to network. You need a back to basics training or questions, because that's how I used it at the beginning. I came into the group and I was like, oh, I'm wondering about the difference from dog root to web in Drupal and why one is named dog root and one is named web. And then the guys were like, oh, it's because of this and that. Something small but relevant, because sometimes the dogs out there miss that point that Acquia and Pantheon decided to have their own naming convention. And that's not necessarily something that's unique, but it can be confusing when you're new because that's not something that's prevalent in other systems.
So the user group is really like the group of people, right? And that's a wider group of people. For you guys, it's a majority, or it's maybe folks that are in the Tennessee area, right? Within that geographic boundary. Maybe there it gets a little bit wider. But and then for a meetup, that's like a physical meeting of people in like maybe closer to the Chattanooga area. Is that a fair assessment of how you guys are kind of using those terms?
That is fair, except for right after COVID, we open up or a meetup to have a Zoom link. So people who are
Okay.
remote or who used to be part of our users group doesn't really miss out on the conversation or just hanging out with us. Because part of that is just coming in, seeing some friends, catching up, and why not going out for a meal or just hearing about the new job that that person got or where they're at now. So every now and then we get people who might live now in Asheville, Florida, or Seattle or somewhere else, and then drop in and then just chit chat for a little bit.
Got it. So it's opened up to a much wider area, which is nice. But
I'm so
speaking,
confused. What is it? What
Oh,
is the
okay.
difference between? I'm missing. Do you have user group meetings and meetups? Are they different things?
No, so
No.
like I'm positioning it here, I think is
Okay.
like user groups and Bo, Lee, and Bernardo can agree or tell me I'm wrong. Like user groups are like the wider group, and they may just converse in Slack or on message boards or something like that, right? They might go to the actual Drupal camp, right? That happens, I'm assuming once a year. Lee, is that how
Yeah, that's right.
Chattanooga works? Yep. But then the meetups are like usually, in real life or maybe in real life and Zoom meetups that happen more in like a smaller group or a subset of the user group.
So a meetup is a scheduled event for the user group.
Yes.
Okay,
Sure.
great.
And let me share, we've got a bit of a weird setup in Texas. So I'm an organizer of the Austin Drupal Users Group, which is a part of TX Doug, or Texas Drupal Users Group, which is sort of a loose confederation of Drupal event organizers across Texas. And we call our events meetups. So it's a bit of a word scramble. But honestly, I don't think it matters too much what we call it, right? As long as people understand how to participate, right? And how do they get involved.
And that their user group is there to support them, and the meetups are there to like connect people, right? Like you can use the kind of the terms interchangeably as long as people understand kind of the meaning of them. I want to go specifically back to meetups for a second. And Bo, I want to ask you as kind of a user participant of a meetup, right? Somebody who kind of like found a meetup, got involved, jumped into Drupal, right? I'm wondering what kind of attracted you to the meetup versus something like DrupalCon? Was it, the kind of unstructured sounds negative, kind of the looser format and the fact that you could kind of go and maybe ask a question, get an opinion? Was it the lack of like structured sessions and more of just kind of like connecting with peers that made you gravitate more towards the meetup? Or was it just simply like, hey, the meetup is close, and that was kind of a lead in to something like bigger like DrupalCon?
It was the last. I mean, for me, it was, I wasn't a developer at all when I found the Drupal meetup. So I had no clue that DrupalCon even existed or even any other Drupal camps that existed. So it was my introduction to Drupal. But soon after I came into the meetups, Lee always tries to take people to different events whenever he can. So I went to Atlanta, the Drupal camp Atlanta first, which is only 2 hours from Chattanooga. And we usually try to go to our regional camps and stuff and kind of have a presence of where we go because we travel together. But to me, it's just the meetups are really important because they're accessible to a lot of people, and because DrupalCon costs money to travel to, you have to pay for the hotels or whatever it is. And if you're not a developer, now that it's kind of pricey to get to to be able to afford DrupalCon if you're paying out of pocket.
Yeah.
Especially not being a developer, just trying to, have a dream and trying to chase after it. That's what I told my wife. Whenever honestly, I was talking to the guys at our meetup and kind of found out how much money that people made in Drupal. And I told my wife, I said, this is what I want to do. I want to chase this dream and try to, become a developer. And she said, well, what do you need to do? And I said, I want to go to DrupalCon. So it was DrupalCon LA, which was in 2015. So I paid my way out to DrupalCon. I wasn't a developer then, but I came back and 30 days later, I had a contract. It was a 90-day contract. It was for somebody local in Chattanooga that I met at the meetup. And, he just gave me a chance to interview and, hired me on as a junior developer.
Of course, he didn't tell us he was going to LA. We just bumped into him.
Well, I mean, sometimes those are the best interactions, right? And DrupalCon LA, I seem to remember, was a pretty good time. So you picked a good one to go as your first one.
So Bernardo, for you, I'd like to know, what do you think is the most important thing about a user group or a meetup?
So the most important thing is the opportunity for you to ask the silly questions that you don't feel compelled to ask at a conference, which only lasts 2 days, and you're probably overwhelmed by the amount of knowledge that people are giving you in Drupal, and also the ability to have somebody close by so you can see them the month after and the month after that. Because the problem with conferences is the follow-up. I could have gone to any given conference, but if I did, I have to wait 12 months to get back into that conference and potentially see some of the same people. That might be a little too long for me to keep my interest in Drupal or to answer some of the questions if I have something that I'm trying to build or get started with.
How about you, Lee?
Yeah, it's good to meet people. I mean, when people come, so new guys turn up to the user group, I always try and feel them out to see where they are. So all of us have been doing Drupal for quite a long time now, so sometimes we can overwhelm people. So we had a couple of people I said to us, like, it looks like magic. I'm like, it's just experience. Like, give it a year and a half and you'll be doing this, and people will look at you thinking you're doing magic as well. How can you do that fast? So yeah, it's getting people in, meeting people. I consider I do more of the community organizing than I do, module development and things like that on Drupal.org, and had people turn up. I quite enjoy it. It's kind of my bag, man, as you say, right? So I like dragging people in, whether they like it or not.
Bo, do you have any additional what's most important about the meetups for yourself?
I think the most important thing about the meetup is consistency, right? So that we have it every month and it's something to kind of look forward to. And like a few months ago, Lee was in the UK and we just done it virtually instead of going to his office. And, it's that thing to where a lot of people, I work from home. I've worked from home for several years, and it gives me a reason to go out. It's about 20 miles to Lee's office. I'll go downtown and hang out with them and, spend an evening talking about Drupal and, trying to learn something new. So it's just been able to, have a sense of community with the, people we have. Like there's been many times over the years, it's just been me and Lee in his office and nobody else show up. And we'll talk about what we want to talk about for an hour or two. Then we'll go somewhere and either get dinner, have a beer, whatever it is, and continue it. But then there's been other times when we have, 10 people in the room, and we have 4 or 5 people sign up and come in virtually. So we'll have 15 or 20 people in the group. So it's a wide, the big difference in audiences you can have. But I think the most important thing you can do with any kind of meetup is be consistent and have it every month. Don't just and that's why we make ours easy. So it's just kind of free flowing and there's no real responsibility or pressure put on anybody. We can just show up and talk about things, and whoever wants to come in and talk about something can.
I'm so encouraged to hear about meetups that have wide attendance, right? That got lots of people coming and participating. But I think there definitely has been, less attendance recently. So my question for our guests here is, why has attendance dwindled? And perhaps more importantly, what can we as organizers do to combat that and sort of re-energize people participating in meetups? Maybe we'll start with Bernardo.
Sure. So I think something that has affected meetups is probably just the level of responsibility people take on when they try to either lead or co-organize a meetup. I know I like to say that ours is loosely structured because sometimes we will have something coming up. Sometimes I will get some slides together and demo it to the guys, but sometimes it's just about chatting about what we did that week and just about being there present in the moment. I know some of the meetups I went to in Atlanta had the problem that because they grew up too big, the organizers felt like they had to structure it, so it was like a mini conference. And if you set up a meetup as a mini conference, you are probably going to burn out some of the community members, because at that point, you are having a conference every month, and that is a lot to take on.
Good points. And Bo, what do you think?
I mean, I'm in the same way with Bernardo. I think that, you keep it easy and make it where it's, you just come in and want to be, approachable for people, and, it needs to be, I guess, back to the consistent thing of where you need to have a dedicated location if you can. That way it's always available at the same time, and then have it where it's hybrid, so you can just make and dial in if they need to, because you're not always available to, I'm not always available to drive 25 miles to Lee's office, but I may be able to dial in and listen to it on my phone or watch it on computer or whatever it is, depending on where I'm at or what I'm doing. And then, I think that, attendance dwindles because we don't really try to grow it. If we don't, whenever we like this week, we have Scenic City Summit in Chattanooga that we're going to go to and be like the Drupal community there, and try to bring people over to our side to get them to come to our meetups and hang out. And then a few years ago, we would go to Chattanooga State, which is a local community college, and do one of our meetups there every year, one month, and see if, just introduce it to students to see if we could get anybody to come over. And because that's where we always done our Drupal camp. And we actually we only recruited one person from there, but now she's a Drupal developer, so I guess it's the small wins, but we have to be able to always be selling like a salesman, right? Just be out there and try to grow the community. And then the more people you talk to about it, the more people will show up.
So,
And
something that I think you brought up both in the last question, Bo, and in this question, right, is having that kind of virtual option, right? I wonder, Lee, as kind of the organizer of the meetup, right? What's your feeling on the virtual option, and do you feel like it gives people kind of an out not to attend in person?
Well, you can kind of look at it that way, but generally anyone close enough to make it, because we've now been doing this for so long together, we're all buddies. So we like to meet each other. Everyone's working from home. It is nice to have an outlet for that. So people will make it if they can make it. But if they can't, at least they can make it on Zoom. Then we have people, from Knoxville and Nashville sort of dial in who won't drive the 2 hours, and I don't blame them. But at least they can meet and talk.
It's around lunchtime here in the Northeast, and you just mentioned Nashville, and now all I can think about is hot chicken.
Hot chicken.
Which is delicious. But anyway, yeah, I struggle with the virtual thing because like Bo, I work from home, and like I like to get out and get to events and meet people in person. But I think, Lee, you bring up a great point as to like, it can be helpful for folks that maybe can't get into the meetup to meet in person. So you may have converted me into maybe hybrids are the way to go. Going back,
COVID did that to us, right? We had to do them all.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the other thing for me is like another Zoom meeting like is just like feels like nails on a chalkboard to me a little bit, but I can see it as an alternative. Like if you have it in person and virtually. Lee, I wonder, is it hard to manage the in-person and virtual and kind of make sure that the virtual folks are getting the same value, same experience out of it?
Sure, it can be. I try and spin the camera around so they can see as many people as possible, and as long as you remember to put what you're seeing out on so on the TV on the wall, so everyone's seeing it through Zoom. Yeah. I feel it works reasonably well, as well as it can. I'm not sure there's anything we can do, and sometimes I forget that there's that I haven't shared it, but people normally remind you.
Yeah. So going back to JD's question, do you feel like the virtual aspect, kind of the hybrid aspect, has helped you maintain your attendance or grow your attendance?
I think it gives people a chance to drop in, and they can listen to us talk to each other and see it's not formal in any way, and we're quite clearly all buddies. So it's easy to fit into a group like that.
Interesting.
I'm curious if you find that new members may try the Zoom meeting a few times before they show up in person.
Not that I've noticed.
Okay.
Normally it is people that we know from neighboring cities sort of jumping in. Maybe people just like us too much. They want to come up and drink a beer with us. That's probably what it is. Bo and I are always found together walking around conferences and encouraging people to come to the after parties and things.
So let's talk a little bit about success, right? So I organize a meetup. I've been affected by kind of dwindling attendance throughout its, life, I guess you could say. I'm wondering, and Bo kind of touched upon this a little bit previously, where he said, hey, you have to have that consistent place and that consistent time where every month somebody can join, meet up if possible. But Lee, I'm wondering what other kind of success tips you have for folks that might be thinking about starting a meetup, or for me that already has a meetup.
I think in reality, it takes less effort than you think. If you've got a couple of like-minded people who are interested in getting together, just go ahead and do it. Like Drupal Camp Chattanooga started because I was at Drupal Camp Asheville and they had the guy who did the the cod distribution.
Mm.
And they was talking about that, and he's like, we started, and our logo is a dead fish, right? And it's like, oh, it's not even a live fish, it's a dead fish, right? And at the end of it, he said, what I've got to say to people about thinking, oh, I don't know enough, I don't know what's going on, is you can all start it because dead fish. And at the end of that, I walked up to him and went, I've got to have a Drupal camp this year. So that actually was 2013. So that was the year we had our first Drupal camp. And it just takes a little bit of effort to pull together some like-minded people. You can do it. It's not as bad as you think it's going to be, I think is the way to say it.
So it's like the KISS principle, like just keep it simple, stupid. Like you don't have to overcomplicate it. And it sounds like you guys don't necessarily have a topic every month where you have a speaker that you bring in. It's more just like maybe some months you have a topic. Mostly it's just lightning talks. People come in and kind of, hey, I'm having this problem, or hey, I did this cool thing, check it out. And that's kind of how you guys run it. Is that fair to say?
It is. Well, what I say is we all come and we open our toolboxes. We share some of our tools. When everyone closes their toolbox, everyone's got a bigger toolbox. And we do that every month. So even if it's just a little thing, so it's just talking through. Generally in a month, especially these days, stuff happens so fast.
Right.
New AI things have come out. It doesn't necessarily have to be Drupal related, but in the wide web development related, there's always something happening. So someone's read something, someone's tried something new. The idea is to just spread a bit of that knowledge around a bit.
So what do you think? And I'm seeking feedback here. The Providence Drupal meetup has switched to like a quarterly cadence. Like, is that good as long as we keep it quarterly, or is it like, hey, that's too long in order to kind of like be useful to folks?
Personally, I feel if we went to quarterly, I'd literally lose everybody.
Yeah.
People forget 3 months is so long.
Yeah.
Okay. If I also run like a board game meetup, and we slowly get people building up. And if we do it every other week. If I miss one, we half the number of people that turn up for the next one, and then we have to slowly build up back up again. Then the second you miss one, boom, it plummets again. Okay. People just forget, right? They don't mean to. It just falls off their calendar, and they move on with other things. And it's just, I think it's just, how it works. It's not mean or anything or deliberately forgetting about you. It's just you have to keep pushing yourself back into people's consciousness, and then it becomes a habit.
Lee, it sounds like your approach to organizing meetings would prevent organizer burnout. So I'm wondering if you guys have experienced burnout, or if you know organizers that burn out, maybe how they could prevent that.
I used to try and do something.
Lee, go to Lee and then Bernardo.
Okay, so I used to do something every month, and the joke was it was called the Lee Show, right? Whereas as soon as I went to a bit more freeform, and it was more by accident, like I haven't got anything, let's just see how it works, and that seems to work. We've got a lot of good Drupal guys, and they've all got something to say, right? And you can't know it all, so
So just
sharing
provide a place and a time, right?
place and a time.
Yeah.
And it just kind of happens.
Yeah. How about you, Bernardo?
So when it comes to that, I think it's a little bit of helping your leader organizer or your organizers balance themselves out a little bit. Because I know in the past few years, the rest of the community members, we stepped up to help more with the camp because it used to be a lot of lease time and energy. And we noticed that that was something that we needed to help a little more if we wanted to keep having it and not necessarily have that weight on him too heavy. So then we step up and then we kind of help through that a little bit. So sometimes it's how much you appreciate the community that you have, how much you appreciate the lead organizer and the organizers. And sometimes it's about the organizer letting other people take some of the responsibility off their plate. Because I know that's something that can be a concern with some organizers. Sometimes people want to do it all, but they have to rely on others if they want to balance that load.
Great advice.
Yeah, that's a great point. I've experienced burnout as an organizer, and I think one of the challenges is letting go and kind of empowering other people to take the reins and make it their own. So, okay, lots of people here organize meetup groups, user groups. If you could snap your fingers, what would you change tomorrow about your user group? Why don't we start with Bo?
For me, I mean, I've been going to our meetup for 12 years. Pretty much every month. It's rare that I miss one. And there's not much that I would change about ours because it just works for us. It's easy. We show up, we kind of do the same thing. And like Lee was saying, it was the Lee show for a while. And now if Bernardo, he goes out to a lot more conferences, and if he has a new session that he's going to present or something, he may come in and kind of run through it, do a rough draft for us just to get practice with it. But like for me, I don't think that I would change anything with ours.
And John, what about you in Providence?
Oh man. Yeah. I think, going back to the previous question about burnout, there was definitely a burnout factor there. So if I could change something, it would probably be, I don't know. I think I'm going to learn a little bit from these guys and maybe just to simplify it and find a spot. And maybe next year we go back to monthly. I don't know. I think Lee's point about 3 months being kind of too long is not something that I necessarily thought about, but I was thinking of it in the frame of, hey, I got to find a speaker, I got to find a space. So like maybe I spend the rest of the year just finding a space that we can kind of inhabit for one time a month, and then we can kind of make it a more simple format. I think that's probably what has been part of the demise here. I actually want to ask a follow-up question there, simply, kind of around the keeping it simple and maybe things that you might want to change. But like, Lee, it doesn't sound like you're offering like food and drinks at your meetup. It's just like a place to meet, as opposed to like, and then maybe you guys go out and like everybody kind of pays for their own thing, right? Is that accurate, or have you gotten like sponsors in the past to try to like sponsor stuff?
I've never had anyone sponsor except for my own company. Occasionally, coming up to Christmas, sometimes we do a gift. Everyone pays $10 and we do a gift exchange. And I'll live in Tennessee, so I can go and get some fantastic barbecue from around the corner, and I'll lay that on for everybody. But yeah, I mean, it's really if the same space, right? Well, I'm lucky because I have my own office, so we can hold that. But before I did that, it's finding someone that would let you use one.
Yeah.
And sometimes the burnout partially as well, I think, is you go, yes, I want this to be the greatest one ever. And you get some things set up and do all this work. And then, one person turns up. And it's what I like to call shouting into the void. You do all of this effort, and then the payoff is so little. It's quite, it's quite disheartening. But it's one of those things that nothing happens overnight. It's a little piece at a time that you need to build on. And it's surprising how often something will come along, kick you in the teeth, and it all drops. And then you have to keep at it again to work it up. The attendance drops off way faster than it picks up.
Yeah.
That is the problem.
Interesting to me because you have a space, you have a company, but you're not looking at it as necessarily a marketing initiative. You're looking at it as just bringing people together and kind of doing professional development, which I think is an interesting take on it.
Yeah, you might be able to find some companies that will let you use their like libraries and things use their conference room. We got one from, there's like a startup incubator thing here. And I don't know how I met the guys, but I was introduced and I mentioned, hey, do you mind if I use that one evening? And they're like, here's the key. After hours, that, as long as you, treated it and cleaned up behind it was great. So yeah, I was quite surprised with that. I was like, you've known me 2 weeks and I've got a key to your office. Like, what's going on?
Sorry, JD, I hijacked your question. So Lee, going back to JD's question, if you could change one thing, what would it be?
Change one thing.
You don't, and you can definitely say nothing because it works. That's fine.
The one thing it's sort of adjacent to it is people ask, like, how did you get into it? What's going on? And like, oh, come to the meetup. You have to spend a bit. You encourage people to come, and the hit rate on that is quite low. I mean, when we go to Chattanooga State and show people there, we're looking at 55 students. One turns up afterwards. So what I'd like to change is everyone's kind of interested, but no one will follow through. I'd like to improve people's follow through so I feel like I've actually made a change. I mean, every time we have a camp as well, I always say if we get one new community member, we've done well. And that's remarkably low, I think, for how it should be. I'd like more people that are showing an interest to keep following up on that interest.
Yeah, that makes sense. Bernardo, any thoughts on a change you'd make?
So for me, I would probably say reaching out to other communities and other conferences sooner. Because this year we're participating and being active on Scenic City, which is a local conference that involves .NET developers and a bunch of others. And I know Drupal for a time was very involved in the Southwest Linux user group and a couple of others. And so just coming out there and then sharing with those people, we've done it maybe very little in the past and we're doing it more. So if I could snap my fingers, be getting started on that sooner.
So
Nice.
you guys all just touched on something that I wanna dig into, pick at a little bit more if possible. And it's kind of like that thing of understanding how people find your user group, right? So you said that you've gone to local colleges, universities, you've gone to other groups in the area. I'm wondering how or if you guys know how people find your user group, like when a new person walks in the door, how do they typically find you?
So the last person we had was somebody who was an ambitious site builder that was living in Signal Mountain, and he started playing with something that 1x Internet or another one of the European companies has that's like a bundled version of Drupal. And he wanted to like set his site up, and then he came down to meetups and asked about a little bit of troubleshooting. So sometimes it's just by Drupal doing cool stuff and then people having questions about it, Googling how to meet Drupal community members, and us popping on it.
Do you guys find that folks in your area kind of like do Drupal as a job, right? Because I'm sure there are a ton of companies in the Tennessee, in the state of Tennessee, right, that have Drupal sites that do Drupal as like a job, or a government agency that runs Drupal for their website, right? But I'm wondering, like, do you find that like people that do it for a job or as part of their work tend to like turn off at 5 o'clock and go like, I don't want to go to a Drupal meetup about Drupal because that's my job and I don't like want to take my personal time to like interact or do that thing anymore? Like, I don't know if that question makes sense, but like,
Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth in that, especially as Drupal's moved up into the enterprise level. There's a lot of government and sort of university people that are, sort of, and I'm done, right? I'm not coming on a Saturday for a, I don't want to go after hours, and I don't want to come on a Saturday for a camp, which is why you're seeing some of them shift into Fridays, I think.
I will say with the New England Drupal camp, we do see a lot of people still coming on Friday and coming on Saturday. But running the meetup, I would see a lot of like, I would know that there were agencies, there were organizations, there were higher eds using Drupal, and like none of the people that worked there would show up at a meetup. or maybe one would come once and then like you wouldn't see them again for like 6 months or something like that. So it's interesting to hear that you're seeing the same sort of thing. I don't necessarily know what we do to combat that or to like attract people to want to come in, but
I think that's where the friendliness and being buddies about the thing comes in. As soon as they realize, oh, these are people I'd hang out with normally, that might help a lot as well.
Yeah, good point.
Kind of leads.
We had
Go ahead,
the Nashville group came down to see if when Drupal Camp Nashville was running, those guys came to meet us really early on for one of our user groups and came and chatted to us and said, oh, by the way, in 2 months, the Drupal Camp's on. And they gave me a lot of, when I was starting out, didn't really know what I was doing. They gave me a lot of advice and things which helped out a whole bunch. So that was the neighboring community came over to help.
That's it. I see what I need to do now. I need to get a Drupal con to come to Rhode Island. Perfect. Makes perfect sense.
Do you have any tips for getting new members to join?
It does feel like shouting into the void a lot.
Okay.
We talk to a lot of people. The people have said, you seem to enjoy what you do. You seem to be around people you enjoy being around. I'm like, yeah, the whole community is like that. It's not just us. So sometimes getting new people is a matter of stumbling across them generally at other conventions or whatever it is and inviting them along. Like a personal invitation goes a long way, but they've got to want to do it. And that's the thing, I was like, I'd like to change overnight. Let's make that a bit more, make them want to come. They, at that moment, they're like, oh yeah, we'll definitely come. And then you never see them again.
Well, I have kind of a related question to that is how do you communicate with the members of your user group? So we're talking at the beginning of this episode about how there's a user group that's a large thing and then the meetup might be a little bit smaller. Are there any particular tools you use outside of Meetup itself that you use to communicate with the user group at large? Do you have a forum or Slack or something that people communicate with each other regularly outside of the actual meeting?
We talk on a Chattanooga Drupal Slack.
Okay.
We tend to invite people that we've met, we tend to invite to that because then instead of going into the Drupal Slack and just being overwhelmed by the number of people in it, it's a small number of people that they know or at least know the names of and they know to see, and they can talk to us and then introduce them to further things. But it's kind of one at a time. I guess the answer to that is in person, one at a time, you introduce them into things. But we have Slack and I tend to send emails out, and Bernardo here tends to have these fantastic ideas, and then he just goes, and Lee will deal with that.
So Lee, I'm so curious about your use of Slack. It seems to me like a lot of the different regions, and user groups sort of spun up their own Slack workspaces, maybe before Drupal Slack was really sort of a thing and was really well used. And I've seen some groups that are transitioning away from their regional Slack workspaces and saying, hey, let's direct people to the Drupal Slack, right, where there's a place for our community, but also it helps onboard, new people into the rest of the Drupal community and get communicating and have other resources. What are the positive and negatives that you see of continuing to host, a Chattanooga Drupal Slack workspace?
It seems to work for us right now. I know a lot of the younger guys are like, what, you don't have Discord? We're like, just pick a place and stick to it, right? We use Slack for work and lots of other things, so Slack works, right? It could be worse, it could be Teams. That's all I have to say about that.
Yep. I will say, JD, my personal view is like, yes, Drupal Slack is the place to be. I know, for Providence, we don't have our own Slack. We just use the Drupal Slack. But I know for New England Drupal Camp, we do have our own Slack, but that's because we have more channels than just one, and we need to have different types of conversations. So it makes a little bit more sense there, right? But I mean, I think, my personal view is like bringing people into the Drupal Slack for meetups, right? For meetup related conversations makes a lot more sense. And in some cases could be cheaper than kind of running your own Slack, because it's just that one other place for people to look, right?
Well, I'm not trying to put myself in the younger guy group there. I would agree that I think for these kinds of organizations, a Discord makes a whole lot of sense. It's kind of getting back to the old forum days, when you would log into a forum, the content is always there. With Slack, if you're not there instantly, it kind of goes away, right? So something like Discord, you can have announcements. You could have, easily have an agenda for the upcoming meeting, when the meeting dates are, kind of like a website in a forum environment. And you really lose a lot of that with Slack.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what Drupal.org and the events section of Drupal.org is working to be, right? Is to be that kind of calendar of events. So that way you can look by like, oh, what's happening in my area? Oh, look at that. My meetup is happening, tomorrow. I should put that on my calendar. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily put an age on it, Stephen. You might just be cooler than the rest of us. Who knows?
Something I'd like to see on the front page of Drupal.org. Find your local community. A massive call to action on the front, right? You've done it, now find the people. And it's never had that, right? You have to dig for these things. And I think the DA could do a much better job of.
I will say to that we do, I think on the new Drupal homepage, I'm looking right now because I don't actually remember. I think there is an event block somewhere on there, but maybe I'm wrong. However, I will say, if I am not correct on that, there is an event organizers issue queue where you can add event improvements for Drupal.org into that issue queue. And then the event organizers working group will, kind of take those things up with the dev team at the DA to see if we can kind of implement some of them. So if you have suggestions like that one, feel free to put an issue in for it and we'll triage it appropriately.
I will say the Drop Times has done something pretty cool in this regard. So they use like geo IP location to figure out where you're visiting their website from, and they will have a little toast pop up saying, "Hey, here's the upcoming Austin Drupal users group meetup," and it has a link to their page and a link to the whatever the pertinent details are. So they're doing some good work as well to try to surface local meetups to people based on where they actually are.
Yeah, I looked at that last night, and they have a really nice setup for finding events. And I noticed the pop up too that it geolocated me for Chattanooga, because our meetup is this week, or supposed to be this week. We pushed it to next week, but it's a really good place to go find events that are happening for Drupal.
And I'm just about to go and paddle down the Nantahala with Tim from the DA, so I'm going to bend his ear all the way down. It's not like you can get away, right?
Yeah, so the event organizers working group does work with Tim to kind of put in, to advance these features if possible. But on a different note, I know that there is an initiative out there, some work being done to kind of add more meetups to kind of the Drupal ecosystem. And I'm just wondering, and maybe we can do this in kind of a lightning round fashion, but like, do we really need more Drupal meetups? Bo, what do you think?
I don't know that we need. Well, I mean, I guess depends on what you're after, right? If you're after in-person meetups, probably, because we don't cover every town and city across the country or the world. But I think we need a better calendar to find things, so that way, if you want to go learn something or want to keep up with, you have a free evening or morning, depending on what time zone the event's in, where you can go find a meetup and hang out, for an hour, or talk shop for an hour or two, and maybe make new friends that you meet at the next event or DrupalCon or whatever it be.
Oh man, you just gave me an idea. Maybe we do Drupal coffees instead of Drupal meetups at night. Maybe they're in the morning. Lee, what about you? Do you think we need more meetups, or should we just foster the ones we have?
I think we need to foster the ones we have, but there are cities without any, right? I think I'm the only one in Tennessee now. So Tennessee's a big state. So generally when people go, "Oh, I really like this," and I'm always like, well, you know what you've got to do, right? Unfortunately, you've just put that big volunteer sticker on your back. You're like, now it's up to you. Go ahead and do it. And when that happens, I always try and say, call me, I'll help you out as much as I can.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, the in-person ones are great, especially with the remote working now. It allows you to get out and find your community. So definitely more if you can find one other person who commits to it, right? Then maybe the two of you can slowly grow a community. Because there's that thing that says, is the crazy person the person that starts it, or is the crazy person the first person that says yes? And now there's two of you. Which one's crazier is the question, right?
Both equally crazy, I would say. But
crazy.
hey, whatever. Bernardo, what about you? More meetups, or are we good with the amount of meetups that we have?
Definitely more meetups. I know we have that saying of come for the code, stay for the community. And I think the community part, meetups are at the heart of it. If you don't have a connection with somebody in the community, you will likely struggle more with the code and you potentially could be missing out on that learning curve. And I appreciate the fact that Talking Drupal has been around for so long because I've been listening for a while. But the one problem we have with this environment, it is that it's kind of like a meetup, but you don't get to hear from listeners. It's a one-way meetup, and the meetup comes in to strengthen that and gives you that feedback and that position where you can have a conversation. Like there's been plenty of times that me, Bo, and Lee have disagreed upon some implementation in Drupal or something else, and we go back and forth on why one way is better than the other. And that part, that's where the meetup's strength lies.
I will say for our listeners, if you have feedback or you want to comment or question on anything, you can find us in the Talking Drupal Slack channel on Drupal Slack. There'll be more at the end of the show about that.
And so as we come to a close here, I'm hoping that some people listening have been inspired by hearing these event organizers talk about perhaps how little it takes to start a meetup. And I wanted to ask our guests what advice they have for someone considering starting or restarting a local meetup. And Lee, why don't we go to you first?
I'd say go ahead and do it. Do it like we said, the sort of the lightning talk. Initially, you're going to have something to talk about, but normally 10 or 15 minutes or show it. I mean, when we met this morning to talk through this, we've decided what we're doing for the next 6 months for our meetups is because we're trying to get new people in, we're doing the back to basics thing. Let's start. Sometimes when people turn up, they're just blown away, like they can't follow, everything's going too fast. We're talking way higher than they expect. They're all new to it. So let's try a beginner class for the next 6 months, because almost all of us can do that on the fly. All right, so pick content types, views, pieces, show people how to site build, right? So if you can do that, you can run a meetup. Just come along, show people, be open to questions, come and talk to me afterwards. It's a fun thing to do. Everyone knows it. That's the other thing, right? After all this time, everyone knows Bo and I and Bernardo. We can literally go anywhere. And if I don't know someone in the community, I know someone who knows them personally.
Well, that's a great point. So the networking opportunities, right? Not just as an attendee, but as an organizer. I wonder if any of you want to speak a little bit more to that. Has that led to any opportunities, that you wouldn't have otherwise had? Maybe Bernardo or Bo?
Sure. I actually came to the camp in 2018, and I came to the camp because I went to the meetup, and the guys told me, "Oh, we're gonna have the Chattanooga Drupal camp coming up in like 2 or 3 weeks." And I probably wouldn't have gone to the camp if I hadn't met the guys, because I thought, oh, well, I don't know that I use Joomla, I use WordPress, I know Drupal is there, but now I know some of the people and I know some of the organizers. Let me go see what that is all about. And that's actually how I got started at University of Tennessee, Chattanooga. And yeah, and I kind of started my journey there. And then I have since then moved on into government and done a couple of different things.
Fantastic. And Bo, any final advice for prospective user group organizers?
Yeah, I mean, I go along with Lee. Is just go ahead and do it, try it out. Make it easy. Try to just come up with a plan to have it for 6 or 8 months in a location if you can. Make it hybrid so it's available for people, and that way they may be able to come in a later month and realize that it's going to be a slow roll in the beginning, and just be approachable and be always be selling it whenever you go somewhere. If you go to other events, talk about it, and because anybody can join the Zoom link for you and and hang out for an hour, and then it doesn't have to be 2 hours at a time. It can be 30 minutes or an hour or whatever, and whatever time works for you. If you want to do coffee, because there's a meetup in Chattanooga that does coffee on Saturday mornings. and then Lee does his PHP group at lunchtime on Wednesdays. So, just figure out what works for you and get started.
And if anyone wants any help, just reach out. I'm happy to talk about it.
Something else I will add in there is before you start one, join another one and check it out and see what works for you and what works for that area. Because I've joined a couple of different ones, the Boston one, the one that we have, and everybody does things slightly different. But if you're gonna start, it probably be better if you start as an attendee and see what other groups are doing, and then move on to your own.
I can recommend the Northwest Drupal user group over in England, Phil Norton's one. Over here, it's like lunchtime, so it's not too bad.
There you go. Well, Bo, Lee, and Bernardo, thanks for joining us, and definitely appreciate your insights and continued success with the Chattanooga user group and camp.
Thanks for having us.
Questions or feedback? Reach out to Talking Drupal on the socials with the handle Talking Drupal, or by email with show@talkingdrupal.com. You can connect with the hosts and other listeners on Drupal Slack in the Talking Drupal channel.
You can promote your Drupal community event on Talking Drupal. Learn more at talkingdrupal.com/tdpromo.
We have a newsletter. Did you know that? You can get the Talking Drupal newsletter to learn more about our guest hosts, show news, upcoming shows, and more. You can sign up to the newsletter at talkingdrupal.com/newsletter.
And thank you, patrons, for supporting Talking Drupal. Your support is greatly appreciated. You can learn more about becoming a patron and all the benefits at talkingdrupal.com and choosing the Become a Patron button in the sidebar. All right. If folks wanted to get a hold of you, Lee, to talk about meetups, to talk about Drupal, to talk about anything and everything that you do, how best could they go about doing that?
I'm on Drupal Slack everywhere. You can get me at lee@codejourneyman.com.
All right.
Yeah, find the meetup and ping me.
There you go. Join. You can attend the meetup, right? They can
Attend the
find you
meetup,
at
yeah.
the meetup. Oh my gosh, it's so meta. Bo, what about you?
I'm simply Shipley everywhere on the internet. So, and I travel to several events. So, just come up and talk or send me a message.
There you go. Bernardo, what about you?
Same here, Bernard M28 in all the different places. So yeah, reach out.
And we'll be in Asheville in a few weeks. If you want to meet in Purple, Drupal Camp Asheville.
There you go. That sounds like fun too, huh?
And if you're going, we're paddling the Nantahala on the Thursday lunchtime.
There you go. Wow, look at
Everyone's
that.
welcome.
JD, what about you?
I am simply JD Leonard on Drupal.org and Drupal Slack.
There you go. Steven?
At Stephen Cross with a PH.
There you go. I'm John Picozzi. You can find me personally at picozzi.com, or you can find me on social media and Drupal.org at John Picozzi. And you can find out about EPAM at EPAM.com.
And if you've enjoyed listening, we've enjoyed talking.
Thanks a lot, everyone.
That's a wrap.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.